Good morning to all and welcome particularly to the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, and the National Commission for Self-Help Limited. My name is Senator Wade Mark, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. Let me say from the outset that the Committee on Public Accounts has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. We also have the responsibility to look at the Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements, as well as to determine whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of the National Commission for Self-Help Limited for the financial year 2016 and to follow up on the implementation of the recommendations in the committee's 14th report from the 11th Parliament. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the National Commission for Self-Help Limited in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to help the National Commission for Self-Help Limited to improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, as well as on Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's inquiry via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chairman. At this time, I will invite members of our committee present to introduce themselves. Members?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Amrita Devanarayan, member.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Rushton Pare, Vice Chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, member.
Good morning, everyone. Stephen McClatchy,
Scotland.
member.
Yes, and
Keith Scotland, member.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, members. And
good morning,
welcome
everyone. Laurel Lizama Singh, member.
Thank you very much, Laurel and other members. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Mr. McClatchy, and I told you earlier on that he has replaced the Minister of Education. Welcome, Mr. McClatchy. I would like yes, thank you, Mr. McClatchy. I would like at this time to invite representatives to introduce themselves in the following order. Representatives of the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, representatives from the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, and finally, representatives of the National Commission for Self-Help Limited, in that order. Can I invite representatives from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division? Do we have representatives from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division? Can I invite representatives from the Ministry of Sport and Community Development?
Good morning, committee. Good morning, Chairman. I am Beverly Reed Samuel, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, and I'm Acting Permanent Secretary for this week.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. And Belmontes, Research Officer 2 at the Ministry of Sport and Community Development.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Good morning, other persons present. I'm Jacqueline Weeks Spanko, Planning Coordinator of the Ministry.
Thank you. Anyone else from Ministry of Sport? Can I invite members or representatives of the National Self-Help Commission to introduce themselves?
Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. I am Adrian Winter, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the National Commission for Self-Help Limited.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Haid Mitchell. I'm the Vice Chair of the National Commission.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Kanisha Prince King, Director and Chair of the Audit Committee.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. I am Melissa Morris, Director and Chairman of the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and committee. I am Randy Sinanan, Director and Chair of the Legal Policy and Research Committee.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Matthew Kyler, and I'm a Director of the National Commission for Self-Help, Chairman of the HR Committee.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning, Chairman and the committee. My name is Aquino Green, Interim Chief Executive Officer at the National Commission.
Thank you and welcome. Anyone else?
Good morning.
Sorry.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Daryl Worrell, Corporate Secretary at the National Commission for Self-Help.
Welcome. Yes.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and everyone present. Marina Alexander, Internal Auditor, National Commission for Self-Help.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Good morning, Chairman, members, and other stakeholders. I am Avenel Hendricks, Accounts Manager at the National Commission for Self-Help.
Thank you and welcome. Anyone else, or that's the final person?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and other members. I'm Gary Romain, Senior Project Officer South of the National Commission for Self-Help Limited.
Thank you. Well, may I welcome all of these officials to this inquiry of the public organized by our Parliament and conducted by the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. At this time, I'd like to invite the acting permanent, well, we don't have anyone from the Ministry of Finance at this time until a little later on, maybe they will join us. So I'll take this opportunity to invite the acting permanent secretary for this week, as she indicated, of the Ministry of Sport and Community Development to make a brief opening statement. Acting Permanent Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman. The Ministry of Sport and Community Development was formed in August 2020, following the realignment of ministerial portfolios of the former Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts and the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs. The ministry is a dynamic, customer-oriented and policy-driven organization that brings all stakeholders together to promote sport and community development. The National Commission for Self-Help Limited is one of 3 state enterprises under the portfolio of the ministry. We take seriously our responsibilities as detailed in the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual and have worked with the various boards of management and executives of the company to ensure compliance and assist the company in achieving its mandate. The current board of directors was installed in June of this year, 2022. And so far, they have worked quickly with the ministry to address issues relating to the company's operations. We at the Ministry of Sport and Community Development look forward to supporting the company in achieving its goals. We thank the committee for this opportunity to address any concerns you may have on the operations of the National Commission for Self-Help Limited. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I will now invite the interim Chief Executive Officer of the National Commission to just make a brief opening statement.
All right, thank you, Chair, and good morning again, Chair and committee members. So we at the National Commission for Self-Help Limited are ready, willing and able to take part in this meaningful discussion and follow up on recommendations that were previously submitted. So we're here waiting and willing, ready to answer questions.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee of our Parliament, we'd like to once again welcome all of you to this inquiry. I will like to begin by asking for clarification on a few areas of concern to our committee. And I would like to ask possibly interim CEO if he can provide this committee with a status report on the financial statements that are outstanding for the period 2017, 2018, and 2019. Now we understand that those reports will be submitted or ought to have been submitted to the Parliament, of course, via the Minister in question, Corporation Sole, by the 30th of June this year. Those statements, financial statements, are yet to arrive. So I would like the interim CEO to inform this committee as to the rationale for the non-submission of these statements and explain to us when those financial statements will be submitted to the Parliament. Mr. Interim CEO.
Yes, Chair. So we have a synopsis of our status update concerning the manager, Ms. Hendricks, to give us an update on those financial statements.
Okay.
Good morning once again, Chairman, through you. The current auditors are completing the 2017 this week. We had some challenges in terms of the audit was conducted virtually. So all documentation was submitted to the auditors virtually in soft copy. There were some questions during that period for the related to the 2017 financials and some delays there in terms of the staffing here and COVID, etc. So we expect the 2017 to be completed by Friday, and the 2018 will be conducted soon after, and that is not expected to take more than 3 weeks. So after which, once we submit to the Ministry of Finance and we have the AGM, it would be submitted to the committee.
What about your financial statements for 2020 and 2021? When would you be able to complete those statements and have them submitted to the Parliament?
We have all intentions to have those financial statements audited and completed by the close of fiscal 2023.
We will be holding you to that, because I can tell you, as a committee that is responsible for auditing, not auditing, but examining the audited statements of state enterprises, and you fall under that rubric. We are very disappointed that this National Self-Help Commission has been spending taxpayers' monies for the last 5 years without any accountability via submissions of your financial audited statements to this Parliament. So we want to put National Self-Help Commission on notice that we are holding. You have already disappointed us, because we were told by National Self-Help Commission that their 2017, 18, and 19 report, 2019 report, would have been submitted by the 30th of June. And we are now in November, at the beginning of November, and almost a few months after, and we are now being told by your good self, on behalf of the Commission, that we'll have the 17 report, audited financial report, by next week. So I want to put you on notice, and the Commission, that this Public Accounts Enterprises Committee will be holding this Commission seriously to this deadline, and we hope that you will fulfill that commitment to our committee and to the people of our country. Can you tell us who are your auditors?
Currently, More Business Solutions, Trinidad and Tobago Limited.
And how long they have been with the Self-Help Commission?
Chair, this is their first appointment. They started on the 1st of September 2021.
Who was your auditors before?
Bob Gopi and Associates Limited.
And so their services were terminated sometime in 2021.
Their services, correct. At the AGM in 2019, when the financials for 2016 were accepted, the decision was made to change the auditors, because Bob Gopi was the sitting auditor for the past 4 years, 4 years prior.
And what happened between 2019 to 2021 before this new team, as you explained, came on board? More, or the auditors, the new auditors, more. What happened between the period when Bob Gopi left in 19 and when these people arrived? That interim period, what would have happened in terms of having an auditor? What was responsible for not having an auditor to audit those books?
Thank you, Chair. In 2019, after the AGM, the National Commission for Self-Help went out for tender for the new external auditors. The process for that tendering was a selective process, and at the time 4 service providers were chosen. It was reviewed and a recommendation was made to the Ministry of Finance. On June 29th, 2020, the Ministry of Finance Corporation Sole communicated by way of letter dated June 29th, 2020, that they were asking that we redo the whole tender process so that we can invite, based on the recommendations, at least 10 persons. At that time, the Commission decided to do an open tender process, and this was then submitted after evaluation of the proposals. It was submitted to the Ministry of Finance again in 2021, February of 2021, and in April of 2021 was then the May 2021, the Ministry communicated that they were in agreement, and by way of resolution, we were able to remove the past auditors and appoint more business.
Any reason for the removal of the last auditors? Is it because of the time frame of 4 years and you want to change? Okay.
Correct, the period.
All right, so as I said, we at our level will be writing to the Self-Help Commission, holding you to this deadline of December 31st for the submission of all your outstanding financial audited statements for the period 2017 to 2021. And we hope we will not have to have you come before us in December if you fail to submit those accounts, so that you can further explain to the country why you have reneged on your pledge to complete those reports. The other area I would like to inquire into, and this is to the interim CEO. Mr. CEO, how long have you been interim?
Hi, Chair, good morning again. So I have been in the post effectively 19th of September to present this year.
19th of September this year?
Yes, sir.
And who was there before you?
That would be Mr. Rumin, our Senior Project Officer, who was in the meeting with us as well.
And he was also interim as well?
Yes, he was.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, I think it's Mr. Winters, is he chairman?
Yes, Chairman Winters.
Mr. Winters, is the board of directors of the Self-Help Commission responsible for ensuring that we have a permanent CEO on board? Mr. Winters?
Yes, good morning again, Chair. Yes, that would be correct, Chair. What I can say about the Chief Executive Officer position is that the board that was there previous to us, they started the process of the recruitment of a Chief Executive Officer upon the term of Mr. Julian ending. That term would have ended around the 25th of March, and they embarked on that process between the months of February and March of 2022. they left without being able to complete the process. And when we took over in June of 2022, we immediately began that to continue the process of recruitment of a CEO. So I can confirm to you and to the committee this morning that our first round of interviews for that of the recruitment of a chief executive officer is on the 3rd and 4th of November 2022. And if all things being equal, I would say we'd have a confirmed chief executive officer by January of 2023.
Okay, excellent. I just want to ask the interim CEO here, given the budgeted figures that you would have for running the operations of self-help, and given the rising costs of construction material and your function in providing grants to citizens who come before you, given the rising cost of construction material, how is self-help coping with this development? Can I ask the interim CEO?
Hi, Chair. So Hi, Chair. Yes. So in response to your question, what the commission is doing is actually relooking at the criteria used to disperse grants, and also proposing a revision in the amounts of the grants that are distributed, because we know that with rising costs, less assets could be purchased with what we currently offer. So that is the stance or the way forward for the commission. We're looking at our processes, our criteria, and at the upward limit of our grant allocation or distribution. I'm not sure if Chairman Winter, you want to add anything further concerning this?
Yes, Chair, if I may. Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
I was going to ask, what is the current sum a citizen can access in terms of a grant? Is it $10,000?
So, Chairman, we have the emergency repair and reconstruction assistance grant with an upward limit of $25,000. And we have the minor repair and reconstruction assistance grant with an upward limit of $15,000.
Okay, all right. So you said you were going to consider, is it looking at or changing the criteria? Can you elaborate?
Yes, Chair. So our current criteria, there is no upward cap or salary cap for citizens accessing grants, number one. And also not only we look at the criteria, but as I was saying, looking at the amount that we are allowed to distribute to allow citizens to access the more material than what we currently offer. And through you, Chair, I wanted to give our Chairman Winter the opportunity to add some further context to this.
Yes, Mr. Winters?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. So, Chair, I would want to just elaborate that, our grants, since this board came into office in June of 2022, we've been really looking at the criteria to access our grants, because as it stands now, our two major grants, which is the minor repair reconstruction grant and emergency repair grant, the criteria to access those grants are basically just that of land tenure, land tax receipts, and our main target group is that of old age pensioners, single parents, and destitutes. Now, and in the case of emergencies, now if it's a fire, we of course we look for the correspondence from the fire service. If it's a natural disaster, we look for that disaster management letter. So one of the things we've done and we've recognized is that shortcoming in terms of strong criteria, strong policy that guides our grants. So one of the things we did is that we formulated that of a legal policy and research committee of the board, which has been actively looking at that criteria. Because I'll tell you, Chair, there are a number of agencies across the state sector that offer similar grants. The thing with those other state agencies is that those other state agencies, they have strong criteria to access those grants. The thing with self-help, because we have those shortcomings in terms of a strong criteria, a strong policy to guide the grant, it's very easy for persons to come to our organization and access. So, we've come in for some hits over the years because of that. And it's something that we are actively looking at in terms of policy, as I said, solid policy, solid criteria in terms of the access of our grants.
In terms of allocation, Mr. Winters, for the emergency and the minor repair grants at this time, what is the allocation for the that you have gotten for 2022, 2023?
So for this fiscal year, we got an allocation for a development program of $21 million.
21 million.
And that covers grants as well as our development program. And when I say development program, I mean those programs that we do in communities as it relates to bridges, roads, any kind of development works to churches, mandirs, mosques, from a self-help point of view.
In terms of your process as it relates to, well, before I deal with process, can you share with us at this time what is the outstanding amount of applications pending before you at this time for both emergency and minor repairs that have been outstanding? Do you have a backlog? And if you have a backlog, what is the total? And if you can break it down in terms of emergency as well as the minor repairs.
So, Chair, when we talk backlog in terms of the grants, when we talk approvals to issue a grant or to issue a purchase order, we issue that on the basis of an approval of a grant. And we don't want, what we've been trying not to get too tied up with is that of saying that a grant has been approved and there's no money to implement the grant. One of the things that we have been plagued with over the years is that even though there are grants that may have been recommended in the system, they may not have what we call actually approved grants. So we can't really say there's much of a backlog in the system. What I can say as well is that there are a number of emergencies that come up from time to time, and sometimes those emergencies take priority over those of minor repairs. So as it relates to our backlog, I can tell you, if you would so allow, we can provide to you in writing those applications that may have been recommended, but I wouldn't want to use the term too much of approval, because approval, we would want to look at approval against that of the release of funds and the ability to actually issue a purchase order to a client.
So you get to explain to the public the criteria that is used as it relates to recommendation versus, for instance, approval, because you seem to be making a distinction, Mr. Winters, between recommendations or something being recommended to be given and some application being approved. What is the fundamental difference? And do you have criteria that you utilize in order to distinguish between those two concepts?
Yes, certainly, Chair. So as it relates to our minor repair reconstruction grant, we use that of land tenure, land tax receipts, and as I indicated, the main target group, we look at old age pensioners, whether somebody might be a single parent, somebody may have found themselves in a situation, or that of being a destitute person. As it relates to the emergency, we add one more tier to that, which is that of a disaster management letter. Now, even though an application may be recommended based on our criteria, we can only so disburse those funds when we actually have funding. And that is where we begin to use the terminology that the application has been officially approved, once we have the funding to cover the recommended application.
Okay, all right. I think I have a couple of questions on internal fraud policy. I see that we have brought on board an internal auditor. I'm very happy about that because we were of the view, based on the information that we had on the submission made by your good self, that an auditor was still outstanding. So I'll come back to both the fraud policy, the arrival of the internal auditor, and there are some other issues I would like to deal with. But I know that I like to, seeing that we are on this question about emergency grants, we are on repairs, we are on recommendation and approval. I would like to invite Mr. Paré, who can come in at this time to ask some further clarification, and then I'll move on to others and I'll come back. So Mr. Paré, you can come in at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, welcome to members who have joined us today at this committee meeting. Before I run into a couple of the questions that I have, I just want to ask one or two quick follow-up. And just for the, in order not to delay in the timing that we have, very short responses will suffice. I'm looking at the time that it has taken to get a fixed CEO for an organization that is as important, especially now in these tough economic conditions, to get a CEO placed in your organization. Is there any special skill that is required for someone to be appointed as the CEO of your organization that you are having some difficulty in finding, and perhaps not even finding it in the last two gentlemen who, one, Mr. Romain, who has acted before, and your new acting CEO, Mr. Green? What special skill that you are missing that is going to take us till January next year before we hope to find a CEO for your organization, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Through you, Chair. So both let me just indicate that both Mr. Green and Mr. Romain were shortlisted for the position of Chief Executive Officer. We started, we have to take into consideration that the previous CEO would have left because his tenure came to an end in February of this year. The board started the process, and the board would have left before they would have been able to complete the process. Now, we came in June of this year, and we immediately started the process, Mr. Vice Chairman. So I wouldn't say that we have delayed in terms of the process. We want to ensure the process is seamless as possible, that we really choose the best candidate. We did receive about 40 applications in the first advertisement of February to March of this year. And I mean, I think January 2023 is a safe deadline, is a safe start date, if I may.
Okay, thank you for that. And I look forward to that being sorted out in January, because I think the Self-Help Commission is an absolutely necessary unit, especially for rural communities like my area, which I'm the MP for, that is going to spin off a couple of things there. Mr. Green spoke about one of the challenges with regards to the processing of applications, and that the fact that there was no salary limit in terms of when someone makes an application. So you may not have to be only in the area of single mother or some destitute person. You could have been a middle-income teacher, lawyer, doctor, engineer, and you can apply for a self-help grant. And is that what I'm hearing in terms of a bit of the challenge with regards to the application process and having to filter some of those out?
Yes, you are very, very correct, Mr. Vice Chair. And the thing is that one of the things we try to do with our grants is that we try to target a particular group because as you would, I mean, I look at one of the previous recommendations of this committee, and that is, and one of the strong recommendations coming out of this committee was that of us partnering and having a relationship with other agencies that offer the similar grants. So one of the things is that those other agencies may be able to facilitate a grant for one of our clients that are in a similar circumstance, and they may meet that criteria. The thing with our criteria, because it's so open-ended, we just, we receive them, we try as much as possible. I mean, one of the things we met when we came is a real dedicated project management team, Mr. Vice Chair. Those people are really in touch with the ground, really in touch with the communities in terms of these grants. So you are very correct when you say that there is that a bit of the boom.
Mr. Winter, in your experience, and I know you've been there, I'm not sure if you've been there as chairman in the organization before or in another role, but in your experience, when the experience of your other members, the vast majority or the bulk of the applications comes from what strata of our society? Is it lower income, middle income, upper income? Where do you get the bulk of your applications?
So, Vice Chair, yeah, I only came into the commission in June of this year when the other board members would have started as well. It's varied. It comes from various groupings in society. It's not that of only lower income, middle income, or high income. We receive applications from all income groups. Sometimes it basically depends on the circumstance that the person may have found themselves in. Especially when it comes to emergency grants. So someone may be living in that of an urban community, however, they may have experienced some sort of natural disaster, and they approach the National Commission for Self-Help for assistance in those instances. So our clients are not really low income or middle income, as we say. They come from all various groupings.
But Mr. Winter, wouldn't you agree that it is reasonable to think, the wider community out there, it's reasonable to think that the vast majority of these applications are going to come from those at the lower income, lower strata of our society, taking into consideration that their recovery from anything, be it a disaster, a fire, a landslip at the back of their homes, vast majority of these people in rural communities may not have a lot of paperwork and so on. Isn't it reasonable to think that the vast majority would come from this group and special arrangements be made to expedite when these types or that strata of folks come into the system? I just want to give a simple example. In the Mayaro constituency, and I had my staff pull a lot of data for me for this meeting this morning, and I have 13 requests or applications for fire victims from 2016 to 2022. And I wanted to get a feeling from the Self-Help Commission if a fire victim in the lower income bracket is considered an emergency. And if it is an emergency, do you have a set key performance indice that you can say within 14 days, 21 days, or 30 days of all the necessary paperwork come into your organization, we can grant a check to assist this person, either get back some basic amenities whenever they move under a friend's house into a rental apartment or something? Would this be considered an emergency? And how can you explain that we have applications inside that are 12, 24, 36, and 48 months outstanding? How would you give an explanation for something like that?
So, Mr. Vice Chair, I would say with regard to the emergency grants, we try as much as possible within 7 days to issue those purchase orders. But if I may, through you and through the chairman, if I could just ask Mr. Romain to just give us, Mr. Romain has been functioning in the organization as a senior projects officer, mainly in the South area, which would fall under your, one of your districts. Could I just ask him to just shed some light on this, please?
Yes, Mr. Romain.
Good morning all again. Through you, Chair. And also to Vice Chairman. As we speak about disasters, right, especially as it relates to fires. Now, someone's house could be burnt, someone's dwelling could be burnt, someone's property could be burnt. And they will approach the National Commission for Self-Help. As Chairman Winter would have espoused before, we really try within a 7-day period to bring these people positions back to indemnity. Sometimes, a lot of the times, folks will approach the Commission for assistance. They will fill out the necessary application forms and things like that. But at the end of the day, it comes back, straight back to the criteria. So they will fill the form. They will say they apply to the Commission. What happens is that sometimes they don't have the requisite land tenure. So that's one of the main things, right? That will hold back an application. It's one of the main things that will hold us back from even giving the assistance, because once they don't fall or they don't have the requirements where the criteria is concerned, especially with land tenure, right? That will hold it back.
But Mr. Romain, is there a process where these victims, these fire victims, are notified? Because many of them come back to our offices time and time again, asking for updates, asking us to get updates for them. Is there a current procedure where feedback is given to these clients on a regular basis? And even if they don't have the proper documentation, is that told to them that you don't have it and your application has been denied and it is closed off? Is there a process for that?
As it is, we would have recently embarked on a drive where we are reaching out to those applicants, telling them whether their applications are recommended, not recommended, and even why. So that is a recent development which we are going through it as we speak.
I have one question before I allow my colleagues to go in again. And this is for Mr. Winter. Mr. Winter?
Before you continue, Mr. Parry, I just wanted to ask Mr. Romain. Mr. Romain, are you saying that the Self-Help Commission has now embarked upon an approach or policy that would address the issues raised by Mr. Parry as it relates to citizens who would apply, but they would not qualify because the criteria that they are required to meet have not been met? Are you telling us that you have now embarked upon a policy to inform these people either in writing or via communication, oral communication, or both, so that, for instance, you wouldn't have people coming back to the individuals who may have applied for that particular grant and they keep asking you what is going on. But if you communicate with them directly or through writing, as I said, or via communication, it would help. And is that now in effect?
Yes, Chairman, that is now in effect.
Can you give us some examples in writing where people would have, how many instances you would say since that policy took effect, you have executed that policy? How you would say, like, for instance, you have had a few written correspondences or direct communication or both to those persons who have applied?
Yes, so direct communication normally takes place if the person comes back to the organization to find out the status of the application. right? That really was the unofficial part of it. The official part of it is where we actually write to that applicant. And to answer a question based on figures, we over the past couple of years, we would have done a few hundred of those letters out to people via the mail. And what we will tell them is that we would have seen they sent, they would have applied for a grant, and that it was not recommended, right? Because these are not recommended letters, right? We have also added some reason why they wouldn't have met the criteria, right? So in the first instance, when we just started, we just told them that it wasn't recommended, but we have since pushed up that letter to the applicants, telling them, well, you didn't meet the criteria based on, some instance.
All right, thank you. Mr. Parr, you can continue, please. Yeah.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be very, very quick as well. Mr. Romain and Mr. Chairman of the Self-Help, I am hearing of the process and procedures that you are putting in place, right? And I have 404, as far as my records go, my office records go, 404 applications for self-help that we have attempted to follow up over the last year and a half. And we have had no responses. We have had, they come back to our office to ask what's happening. And these are mixed from persons who are applying for the routine things like, an extension to their homes, bathrooms, toilet, roof repairs, and so on. But then there are many which are the emergency cases like fires, and there are cases like landslips close to homes and so on. Many of them are all over a year and a half, which I feel that there's something here. And I'll be happy to provide this data to Mr. Romain or even to the chairman of the committee at some point in time, where some response to my office could come back on another channel. But what I want to ask in terms of this question, in 2021, Mr. Chairman, we had somewhat of some very, very high winds that knocked off quite a bit of our constituents' roofs in Mayaro. And my records have 25 of them that have been approved, or 43 went through disaster management unit. And my understanding is that 25 fit the criteria for some support. Well, that is September 2021. And up to this day, as far as our records indicate and communications with those 25 persons, no grants have been forthcoming. And I want to be very careful what I'm going to say without putting myself in any trouble. There is the perception out there that there's preferential treatment. I want to use that word very, very nicely in terms of which areas get service. And to the people of Mayaro, when they read on the newspaper, and I want to quote this newspaper, right, from the Self-Help, the Newsday, Trinidad Newsday, the 8th of September, which is about 4 days. 4 days after that heavy wind, Self-Help Commission distributes over $3 million in grants. 330,000 to 22 families in Arima. 52 recipients in Mount Hope. 52 families along the East-West corridor. This is CNC3 News. And this is the 8th of September. National Commissions for Self-Help distributes 255,000 in grants to 17 families in the Aruka Maloney constituency today, 21st of September, about a week or two after the roofs were blown off. So my question is, what can you tell those 25 families in Mayaro? Why, clearly, in some areas, these grants are processed within 5 and 6 days, and we are over 1 year. How can you rationally tell the people of Mayaro to wait a bit longer? How can you explain that? Anybody could answer that question.
So, Vice Chair, So that matter in Mayaro is very familiar to us because I would recall that you were there with your constituents on the ground in 2022. I believe it was July of 2022 when a similar disaster struck in the St. Anne's village in Mayaro. And what the office, your office sought an update on those outstanding applications. And at the time, which was in July of this year, what we had recognized was that shortly after that visit shortly after disaster, in 2021, we the commission conducted site visits in September of 21, just days after. What our records reflect is that we conducted about 54 site visits. As of July of this year, 35 of those that were on the list submitted to us for an update were not even registered on our database. So, and that goes back to what Mr. Romain would have indicated, where we may have given the application forms to the clients, but they would not have fulfilled their end of the bargain in terms of bringing in those applications. So, I'm just saying to you, Vice Chair, respectfully, that's what our records would have reflected on those applications. However,
Mr. Winter, I want to respectfully tell you that our office is very meticulous with those forms, right? And even so, if I give you the benefit of the doubt that the applications were not done, it was done incorrectly, why? It is still over 1 year when you have evidence that, and I doubt the people of other constituents are more efficient than we here in Mayaro, that in 4 days an application can go in and you can get the grant. So all I'm asking going forward, Mr. Winter, as I said, your organization is absolutely important, especially for rural communities where you have indigent, you have poor people, and many of these homes that are damaged, these people are, if they may not be squatting, they may have given a blight by a neighbor, a friend, a neighbor, somebody to build something, and in times of the destruction, the roof blow away, they need help. But, how can we, as MPs, representatives of the people, help this process along? Because we would walk through, we would be calling the DMU. We will make sure the DMU turn up on the site, get the reports. If the person comes to our office and say, they're getting a run around from the DMU, I will call the chairman of the corporation and say, look, expedite this, because I know self-help needs some time to process these applications. But from July 2021, we are in November 2022. And I cannot believe, and I will not accept, that not one out of those 25 applications could be processed. And I doubt very much that one out of that 25 applications hasn't been correctly done to get a grant. And I'm going to leave it there because I wanted to raise this matter. Coming back to, tied back to the performance of your organization, how important it is, especially in a time now where our economy is struggling, there's a high amount of joblessness, the cost of food is so high, every cent counts. And when these grants are given to those people, it puts their children into school, which is already under serious, tremendous trouble with a failing education sector. So I will leave it there. And I would like the opportunity to send this data that I have from Mayaro to Mr. Romain, who I've interacted with in the past, very noble, understanding gentleman, and I will continue to work with him. But just for the record, I just want to make sure that this is how the people of Mayaro, and I'm sure of many other areas, see the challenges. And at the end of the day, they are hurting. And no matter what problems you are having, they are still hurting. And we need to fix that. And it is our job as this committee to understand why this is happening and make the relevant recommendations to the relevant minister and ministry. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll pass on to one of my other colleagues.
Yeah. Before I ask Mrs. Sagram Singh Suklal to come in, I just want to ask Mr. Winters and the interim CEO, based on what Mr. Parry said, what would you recommend to address this matter with some degree of urgency? Because the public is listening to what's going on. This is going live, and he has put forward his position. He has evidence of it. How can you, as the chairman and the interim CEO look into this matter, or what would you recommend, I should say, could be done by self-help to address this matter?
So, Chair, thank you. I just want to reassure this committee and the members of the public that there is no preferential treatment when it comes to the distribution of our services. We try as much as possible to ensure that our services or grants or development program is spread across all districts throughout Trinidad and Tobago. If I look at the 404 that the Vice Chair would have identified, that 404, if we talk about a mix of minor repair, Chair, as well as that of emergency, we're talking about in excess of $6 million if the persons qualify for the highest tier. The thing is that with a budget of $21 million, let's say for this fiscal, we have to ensure that $21 million is distributed across all districts in Trinidad and Tobago. What I can also tell you, Mr. Chairman, is that I would have looked at the details as far back as 2010 to 2022, and I have not seen any data to suggest that there is any preferential treatment in the distribution of grants. So I just want to reassure you and the members of the public that that is not a criteria in terms of where you live and that kind of thing as part of our process. In terms of going forward, what we want to do is to ensure that there is a strict criteria in terms of accessing our grants. As I say, Chair, our grants are very easily accessible as it relates to the criteria. We are not able to approve a grant or distribute a purchase order unless we have the required funding. So I just want to put it in that context so that we could just be on the same page as relates to that of where the funding and the recommendation is concerned once again.
All right. Mrs. Sagram Singh Suklal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I know the chairman of Self-Help would have mentioned that this particular board would have come into existence, I believe, June 2022. So, of course, we're looking at almost a 5-month or a 4-month-old board. And I could well imagine, you all would have just had to hit the ground running, being pretty new in our constituted board. But notwithstanding that, of course, I could hear from Member Parry's submission, of course, his deep concern, him being a representative.
Good morning, Martin.
Him being a
representative.
Just a second, Sukla. Mr. Scotland, could you
have money to pay?
Mr. Scotland? Mr. Scotland, could you mute? We are hearing your conversation.
Thanks, Chair, for that intervention. So I do recognize, and that's why I started off by mentioning and reiterating that I understand that the board has come into, this is probably a 5-month-old board. But at the same time, we have a member such as Member Parry, who represents persons that have concerns. And of course, processes, you all just have to it seems as if you would just have to hit the ground running, which is clear and evident that you've already started doing that, to put systems and processes in place within the organization so that you can be able to treat with the applications as they come forward. And of course, I do also understand that you would be limited to the resources that are available at the time when applications do come to you all. So I just wanted to make that simple point. Now, a lot of the discussion this morning has been on self-help reviewing its criteria policy. And that I also want to place on the record that I agree that it's critical, especially because you're involved in the expenditure of state finances. It's critical for you to review that particular policy. And I'm pleased that at least this new board, based on the submissions of self-help, based on your submissions, I'm pleased to recognize that the board would have recognized and acknowledged it was necessary to review its criteria policy. Of course, land tenure being a critical part of that policy. What I can respectfully suggest, of course, through Chairman, we have other state entities that offer similar and like programs. For example, the new HVIP program, the Home and Village Improvement Program. I understand that it's a program that has a strict criteria and policy. So perhaps, again, because you all are a 5-month-old board and you're embarking upon this process of reviewing your systems, you may probably want to look at precedents that already exist in other entities that can serve as a guideline and guidance to your team in creating and establishing a criteria. And I believe that by looking at precedent and relying on precedent from other organizations, you would appreciate it would help you to really be able to bolster your processes as soon as possible so that you could treat with applications that come before you, the applications that are currently in the system, and of course, new applications that will come before you. What you would also, I would respectfully submit that you will have to consider if you're looking at revamping a criteria process is how are you going to deal with applications that would have the older applications that would have been specific to the older criteria, and then you establish a new criteria with for applications. How are those older applications going to be treated with? So in my mind, that's just the legal concerns that I'm having, that you will have to, of course, I just want to alert you all to it. In developing your process map and working out your criteria, remember you have all applications in your system that would have no doubt satisfy an old criteria. You bring a new policy, you create a new criteria. How are you going to treat with those older applications? So those are just things that I want to respectfully alert self-help to, because it's concerns that I have. And that came to my mind when all the discussion we had this morning was relative to this new criteria that you're looking at. I believe respectfully that communication is critical, and I could hear it when Chairman would have raised the concern about, and also Member Parry, about whether or not persons are informed as to where their application is at, and that often is one of the cries and the concerns of members of the public as it relates to many and multiple organizations of the state, where you submit an application and just not having that information. Sometimes, especially when you're talking about vulnerable groups, of course, we can respect and understand that will no doubt affect persons not hearing and not knowing where their applications are at, whether you're going to qualify for this grant or not. And perhaps respectfully, especially because this is a new board, you may want to consider that customer service or public outreach. I know one of the members would have spoken about letters that were sent out recently, and that has to be applauded, right? But it should never be a situation where you wait just to have to send 100 letters at one time. It must be a process where people are continuously being informed. And again, respectfully submitting to you all, that is perhaps something that the organization wants to look at, because you are in the business of serving the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and all people just simply wants to know what, and to be informed of their applications and where they stand. So again, that's just a respectful recommendation that I personally, of course, it's not the committee's recommendation, but based on the discussions that we have had this morning, that I would want to make to the commission. This also brought to my mind the issue of digitization, because if it is that the commission embarks upon, and perhaps that's where we could start the conversation now, because I know I've said a lot, that's probably where we can start the conversation. It's no secret that at least the current government is embarking upon the whole digitization of the public sector. Is there, or what is, if at all, or how far is self-help from trying to totally digitize its internal processes? And I'm thinking digitization from the point of, imagine if, and this may sound utopic, but it has happened. Imagine if someone can track their applications online. It saves Member Parry office from being inundated by his constituents, asking his office to follow up constantly on these applications. And Member Parry is not in a unique situation, because there will be other MPs and other members, other persons whose offices will no doubt be inundated by these requests. So let's talk a little bit about digitization. And if any member of the organization may want to speak to the committee about, your digitization plan and where you all are at relative to, digitizing your work and the process flow within the organization.
Thank you, Member. Through you, Chairman, can I ask your permission to ask the Vice Chairman of the Board, Mr. Hayden Mitchell, to respond to this question?
Of course, yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Chairman, and of course, Vice Chairman, and of course, Chairman of Self-Help. So, to your point, this is something that our board has recognized very early, right? The processes inside Self-Help, they're manual, right? Everything is paper-based. And I'll just give one example. The first approvals meeting we had to go to, we had 2 dining room tables full of files, and you're looking at about 800 and something files for us to go through. You're talking about paper files, right? After this first meeting, we immediately reached out to the digitalization group for the government, right? We already spoke to the Chief Digital Officer, who has agreed to come in and talk to look at our internal processes and guide us through. Because what we found is that while the previous incarnations of the boards, there's a difference between digitalization and digitization, right? What they were doing is, of course, just putting everything, photocopying everything and putting it on the hard drive. But based on how Self-Help operates, we have to do a whole digital transformation that is in line with what the government's policy is. And as such, we have already reached out to the Chief Digital Officer, and I'll be heading that committee to make sure that Self-Help is on that path. And exactly what you envision there is what we want to deliver to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that regardless of where you are, you should be able to log into an app. You should be able to see where your application is, and you should be able to get your status. But that also deals with internal processes that we have to do inside Self-Help, which we are working on now.
Okay, well, that allays some of my concerns, at least the organization, and that has to be applauded, that you would have recognized the need to go that route, because I really believe that, I mean, of course, it's the way the world has gone, right? And of course, it's just about having leaders like yourself and the board, of course, having that vision to be aligned with the government, central government's position of taking your organization in that direction. So that has to be applauded. And of course, I wish you all the very best as you move towards digitizing and digitalizing the organization, because I think it would considerably assist the persons that you serve. Chair, through you, I have a few questions on the internal fraud policy of the organization. Now, based on the 4th report well, actually it's based on page 4, of the submission that we received. It's submissions dated February 2019. Sorry, it stated that an internal draft fraud policy was developed, and it is expected to go before the audit committee for approval, and then to the board of directors for ratification and subsequent implementation. So this was actually on page 4 of the submissions we would have received. And as I said before, it's submissions dated February 2019. Dealing with the fraud policy. Coming out of that submission, my question is, from February 5th to 2019 to now, if I can have a little information on what progress has been made with respect to approving and implementing the said fraud policy. And again, the question is open to any member of the commission to answer.
Yes. Either Mr. Chairman or the interim CEO or both.
Chairman, through you, can I ask the chair of our audit subcommittee to respond to this one?
Okay.
Good morning again, and through you, Chair, I would like to first identify that in 2019, we had the resignation of the then internal auditor. But with the new board, one of the first actions that we took was to go out and to have that position filled, which was filled on the 28th of September this year. The committee would have met, and we have reviewed several policies that are now in draft and submitted via board note for board review and approval. However, we looked at the internal fraud policy, and there are some items that we would want to review, update, and include before that document is actually submitted to the board for approval.
But it's something that has certainly engaged your attention.
Very actively at this point in time. So we have submitted 4 documents, 4 policies for review thus far. But the audit policy, and it's not just the audit policy, it's also a procedural manual for how we implement our audits, our internal audits. And that is in front of the committee and actively being reviewed.
Do you all have you time-stamped this? Are there deadlines that you have set internally as to how soon you may want to? Because of course, I mean, you would imagine with procurement, legislation, and all of those and different things operating, you would realize, I'm sure you recognize how critical having a solid fraud policy and more so it being implemented is to the organization. So against that backdrop, have you all set internal timelines for yourselves as to how soon you would want to convene on this matter?
Indeed. So we had our first sitting of the audit committee, and this was one of the first documents that came before us. The only issue with not moving it forward is that we feel it needs a little more work. We have also engaged the attention of our corporate secretary and the head of the legal committee to look at some items on this for us before it's submitted. We could commit to within a 2 to 3 week period to have the draft ready and submitted to the board again for approval.
Excellent. Now, piggybacking off of fraud, let's look at whistleblowing and whistleblowing policies. Have there been any reported cases of whistleblowing that were investigated so far within the commission?
That is a very specific request. So I will engage the internal auditor this time, keeping in mind that she's only with us for 30 days so far, if anything came before her attention.
Yeah.
Ms. Alexander.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Audit Chair, Chairman of the PAC, and everyone. I have not seen anything with regards to whistleblowing specifically. But I'm certain that there probably would have had opportunities for persons to do so. I don't know, but I haven't seen anything evidence-wise that was done.
Okay, well, I guess once I'm thinking once you have your internal fraud policy, once you want, because so it's clear that the new board, and it's understandable that the new board, of course, would want to review its fraud policy before it's ratified by the organization. And perhaps that may be one area that the committee may want to flag in even incorporating whistleblowing provisions in its review of its fraud policy, because at least based on what is now, I recognize that you're also very new to the organization. But at least based on the submissions that you have made, it doesn't seem that the organization at this stage has a clear structure as it relates to dealing with issues of whistleblowing. And it's just my respectful submission, since the fraud policy, because that will marry with the fraud policy as well. So perhaps it's an area that, you may want to wrap your minds around, especially because that fraud policy is currently before the board for its, for its consideration. Chair, other than that, for now, I have no further questions. Just one quick submission through you, Chair. And it comes back again to the discussions that we have had about the Commission revisiting its strong criteria for persons, the criteria upon which persons can apply for the grants that are available. I just want to, respectfully put on the record as well, even though, yes, it is critical to have a strong criteria, when grants and state money is involved, let us also be reminded that the Commission's mandate to a great extent is to serve vulnerable persons, and vulnerable persons, whether it's senior citizens, victims of natural disasters, victims of, let's say, fire, low-income single parents. And I just wanted, for the record, just to remind the board that while a strong criteria is critical, because again, it's state funds and you have to, there must be legal criteria in place. Also, do not try your endeavor best not to depart from the fact that these are the groups of persons that you are servicing. So while you want to put strict measures in place, which I recognize and from a legal perspective understand it's critical, at the same time, we don't want to have policies that now the very said people that you're supposed to be serving and assisting, they can't satisfy that said criteria. Because to my mind, what is the point of the grants if the persons it's meant to serve cannot have access to those said grants? And that's just my respectful, 2 pence, because of course, again, this is for the benefit of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, with those few words, I have no further submissions.
All right, thank you very much. I'll now ask Mrs. Laurel Lizama Leasing to come in at this time, because I know she did indicate to us earlier on that she has a commitment. Laurel?
Thank you very kindly, Chairman. Good morning, members, and welcome once again. And thank you so much for spending your morning with us here at the Public Accounts and Enterprises Committee. I want to thank you, first of all. I want to congratulate the new board, because you've been in office for just over 4 months, maybe, and you literally jumped straight into the fire in the middle of the aftermath of a pandemic, where people certainly were tremendously challenged. And beyond that, knowing that we are also in the middle of hurricane season and there are lots of challenges coming with the weather, acknowledging the effects of climate change, etc. And so I want to thank the Self-Help Commission. I want to thank the board for the work that it has been doing, and I want to thank the previous members as well. Like the rest of the committee, I too would appreciate the reports as committed by the 31st of December. Chairman, is that the date that we had committed to, receiving them by the 30th of December this year, if I'm not mistaken? So I really look forward to receiving that. I really look forward to receiving that. It would help the PAEC in its work. It would help us tremendously so that we could continue our work in monitoring this particular enterprise. I would just like to ask a question about your strategic plan, because we're speaking about the state's money. We're speaking about what your and it follows what Minister Sangram Singh Suklal just spoke about. It follows the accountability for state resources. And most importantly, it seeks to help the vulnerable people in society as per the mandate when it was first established, from my reading, under former Prime Minister A.N.R. Robinson in 1987. And so I want to ask you a little bit about your strategic plan. So I know the last information we had with your financial report would have been in 2016. And so I'd like to know about your strategic plan. Where are you with that old plan, and where are you perhaps with a new plan? So if you can please just tell me so that we can discuss how your strategic plan is giving us value for money and fulfilling your mandate. That's my first question, Chair. Thanks very much. And I put that to either the acting CEO or the chairman of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman and Member Lizamali Singh. Chair, let me just give a little historical perspective as to where we are to the strategic plan. And it's just to say that in 2020, we submitted that revised strategic plan for 2019 to 2023. It was submitted to Corporation, Solar and Line Ministry at the time. The Line Ministry at the time would have been the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts. The strategic plan was then resubmitted in June of 2025. Sorry, June 25th, 2021. And very, very quickly upon my assumption as chairman of the board, I received correspondence from the Investments Division, which highlighted that a review of the plan needed to be done again to ensure that the plan was in alignment with the company's mandate and their significant focus on self-help and community development. So immediately again in August of 2022, we started the process of reviewing that strategic plan. We did receive a deadline of November the 7th, 2022 to submit that strategic plan to the Line Ministry and Corporation. So I'm happy to report today that we are well on the way to completing that strategic plan. And that strategic plan will cover the period 2022 to 2026.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman of the Board of Directors, Mr. Winter. Thanks very kindly for that. And so if it's taking us from 2022 to 2026, in the interim, what is your guiding philosophy insofar as accountability and transparency? Because I want to go next to the risks that you have to take as the self-help board.
Sorry, member, I was talking and my mic muted. So we have, just as you pointed out, very rightfully, member, the commission was established in 1987, and we were later registered as a state enterprise in 1997. So our original mandate was that to nurture and develop a culture of self-help and self-reliance in communities in Trinidad and Tobago, and to facilitate the promotion, design, and implementation of self-help projects, to stimulate the development of individual and community industry, enterprise, and corporate efforts, to monitor the implementation of self-help projects, and more so to identify and develop and implement programs that may create scope for further opportunities within that of the national community in general. So we have not, what we have not done, we have not strayed from that mandate as it relates to how we operate on a daily basis. So that has been our guiding principle. The original mandate. There are some elements within that strategic plan that are in alignment with the mandate that we have been following. But of course, we don't want to operate outside of an approved strategic plan, and the process, of course, has to be that of the approval of cabinet. So once we get those approvals, we will start implementing those measures identified in the strategic plan.
All right, thanks very kindly. I just have two more questions, please. Do you think that there is sufficient communication coming out from the Self-Help Commission insofar as what is available from you and what the process is? Do you think you are sufficiently resourced to assist with having those forms filled properly and data input? And do you think you are sufficiently resourced to assist people who have put in these applications, legitimate applications?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry for that, Chair. I'm just having no technical difficulties. Can I just ask through you, Chair, for Mr. to respond, and then I will supplement that with what I would believe would be an effective internal and external communication strategy.
All right, Mr. Romain.
Through you, Chair. Could I just ask Member Lizamo Leasing to repeat the question for me? I lost part of it. So just repeat for me, please.
Certainly, Mr. Romain. I'm asking about the resources and I'm asking about the communications. Communications first and then resources. Do you think that the National Commission for Self-Help has a sufficiently strong communication machinery whereby persons know about the availability of the grants that are available through the Commission? Also, to get back the information, do you think that you are sufficiently resourced to receive the information, to input the information, to act upon the information? And do you think that there is a need for more resources for your effective functionality?
Okay, so through Chair, I answer. As it is right now, in terms of the communication part, we are a bit under resource, but we are also working on it. So it's in progress, right? Where we're working on the communication aspect of it. The second part, where if we are equipped to take from incoming, we also fell short a little bit on that in terms of the resources, but we are also working on it. And through this board, which is only 4 months old, they are in fact, right, working hard at all the internal processes to bring everything up to standard, right? In terms of the other part concerning the resources as it relates, no, we are a little under-equipped also in that aspect, but I say again that the board, all the internal processes as it relates to the Commission and the public at large, the board is working very assiduously to bring everything up to standard.
Mrs. Lisek, Lauren?
Yes, thanks very kindly, Chairman. I know that the Chairman of the board said he would come in after Mr. Romain, so I was just waiting to see if he wanted to come in or if I should just proceed with my final question.
Yeah, well, you can go to your final question and the board chairman will come in thereafter.
Thanks so very kindly. And my final question is insofar as the risk. Have you found instances, and I know member Sir Ramsin Suklal spoke to the issue of fraud, but have you found instances where, or are there several instances or any, where persons have taken the grants and not done what they were supposed to do? And if that is the case, then what is the penalty or consequence, if any?
Yes, thank you, member, for that question. And definitely, yeah, in any scenario where grants are being distributed, you will find persons who come into your system to deceive. We have found such instances. I have looked back to the records over the years, and all those matters have been referred to the police where necessary. Some of those matters are receiving the attention of the police up to date, actually. So in all instances where those matters of fraud have been detected, we have referred those matters to the police accordingly.
Thank you very kindly, Chairman. That ends my round of questioning, and I thank the members. I wish to seek my leave within the next 5 minutes, and I want to congratulate the board and the team, the members of staff at the National Commission for Self-Help for the wonderful work that you're doing, and I want to encourage you to continue to develop and strengthen the institution that is of such great service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks kindly.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lizamo Lising. Mr. Scotland, Keith? Scotland? Is Mr. Scotland there? All right, if not, I'll just.
I'm here, Chairman.
Would you like to raise any questions,
Yes,
Mr.
please,
Scotland?
Chairman. Yes,
Thank
Chairman. To the Self-Help Board, and I know this board is just 6 months in its new incarnation, Chairman. Chairman, through you, may I ask, how does this new board intend to reach the most needy as it relates to self-help? What is the plan that they can touch the most needy? The people who need self-help the most.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, member. Through you, Chair. You know, one of the things we've recognized as a board very, very early is that of, you know, where communications is concerned, you know, we need to have an effective internal as well as an external communication strategy, and a strong one of that. And whether it be a public sector organization, a private sector organization, a ministry, a state enterprise, or a statutory authority, it is an important element to any business growth and performance. And the thing is that even though both the internal and external communication strategy may have some differences and distinct goals, you know, there are a lot of similarities as it allows for that of strategic alignment, things like understanding our audience and, you know, helping our employees to be that of brand ambassadors and to build that community around our brand. When I look at the National Commission for Self-Help, I look at the response and I look at the interest in our portfolio of grants, you know, I could say safely through you, Chair and member, that, you know, I think in terms of persons understanding that suite of grants and knowing how to access it, I think that is out there. What we have to, or what we have been trying to do thus far is that of managing expectations. And, you know, one of the things we implemented is that of a public relations, marketing and branding subcommittee of the board, and their terms of reference is that of keeping with our internal and external strategy. So that committee would be providing us with some recommendations towards that, MP Scotland, and through you, Chair. So I would be happy to report to the committee with our December 30th deadline in terms of what our plan and strategy is to target those vulnerable groups.
Right. Chair, through you, may I look at one aspect of fraud and ask, through you, Chair, if persons take grants and do not use it for the purpose for which it was granted and abuse it, it means then that there were needy persons who would have required that grant, who were deprived of that grant, and it went elsewhere and was misused or abused. What action does the self-help, what action does the board have in place to deal with such errant persons?
So through your Chair, could I just respectfully ask that, so we have Director Randy Cernan, who's the chair of that Legal Policy and Research Committee. Can I just ask him to respond to this one, please?
Sure.
Good morning again, and through you, Chair. That aspect is currently being looked at because there was a situation where the materials, the grant would have been approved and they would have secured the materials. And then it just vanished from the site. The applicant who was the beneficiary of that grant went missing. So that issue is currently before the policy in draft form. And we are at the state of settling that policy in terms of retrieving situations like that. How do we retrieve materials and or compensation in that regard? So it is something that we're currently looking at.
Chairman, I have one more area that I would want to interrogate with your leave. You would agree with me through you, Chair? May I proceed?
Yes, of course.
That staffing and adequate staffing must be critical for the optimal and efficient operation of your entity. What is being done in the short term to address the staffing issue?
So, member, and through you, Chair, we are currently reviewing the organizational structure of the entity, Member Scotland. We have recognized those deficiencies in terms of staffing. I mean, when we look at the 2014 organizational structure, you know, it may have been developed for that time. So we are actively looking at that in terms of to see, you know, what matches this current time frame in terms of staffing.
What is the time frame for addressing this?
Oh, sorry, certainly, yes. The time frame for addressing that issue is by December of 2022. We are hoping to have a recommendation made to Line Ministry and Corporation Seoul in terms of what this new structure should look like. And very shortly after that, we will do that of getting the cabinet approvals. But yeah, our deadline for that, based on our program of works as a board, is that of December 2022.
Tell me, as it relates to that synergy, and I'd respectfully piggyback from Member Lazamali Singh and Member Renuka Sabran Singh, and also in a way Member Pare, what outreach programs? So do you have any plans to come out from your offices, set up some regional sub-offices with these staff and meet the needy people, some people who need self-help? I have one constituent, she's 78 years of age. I had to go to her for her to sign up the form. And what do you plan to do as an outreach program so that you can really touch the people who are most needy?
Oh, yes, thank you very much for that question, Member. And through you, Chair, you know, the decentralization is a major aspect we have been looking at as it relates to our services. In as much as possible, like someone who you just described, they're 71 years old and can't really come to our offices, we allow, you know, if you all reach out to us, we send a project officer to them to evaluate their situation so that they don't have to come into our offices to drop off an application and we do that constant back and forth. We meet the client on that half. The other thing we have been looking at, and it has been a conversation happening since that of 2018 or before that, is that of like a mobile bus, similar to what the licensing division has, in terms of going into rural communities, going into those communities where persons can't really come to.
Not just rural, urban communities also.
Correct, Chair. I mean, correct, Member. Yes, definitely, because our clients are across all communities, whether it be urban or rural. But of course, you know, we are actively looking at that. But that requires a conversation with the PTSC. It requires a conversation in terms of acquiring that bus. But we are going to be using the same model as the licensing division. The thing is that my daytime job, I work in the licensing division, so it's easy to get the information in terms of getting the process in which we must follow. So,
Chairman, through you, may I ask that we put this entity on could you give us just in 1 month a time frame? Give us a time frame in one sentence. When do you think you can bring that outreach program to fruition?
Member, I think based on the workings of the Public Relations, Branding and Marketing Committee thus far, I think we can have those approvals and that solidified by the ending of this year. So we could look at a January 2023 launch of that service.
And finally, Chair, sometimes, and again, I piggyback on fellow members, fit for purpose and fit for the persons that are most in need. One of your criteria sometimes for self-help is that the persons must own the property. Sometimes you have persons who live, let's say, in certain areas who would be living in a property for over 30, 40 years. So it's really theirs, but they don't have a deed for it. I think the time has come, and I would offer assistance that we change the criteria, and the criteria, the raison d'etre must be bona fides. There must be a real need and a real need for persons. So in other words, you don't want to fix somebody's roof who, when you fix it the next day, a landlord comes and claims it, because you want the person who was the most needy, you want that person to benefit from it. But don't you think it is time that we adjust the criteria, that it becomes more relevant to the persons who will be accessing it?
I agree with you fully, member. Yeah, so that's why we have been looking at that criteria very actively in terms of bringing us in alignment with what you just suggested. We have had instances in the past where, you know, persons would have been afforded grants and landlords came afterward and put them off of the property. And of course, we look at that as taxpayer dollars just down the drain. And this is not what we want to encourage. It's not what we want to do. This is not what the grants is about. The grants is about helping those vulnerable persons in society.
Chairman, I thank you profusely for your indulgence. And those are my respectful questions to this entity. May I be relieved, please, Chairman?
Yes, thank you. Yes,
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Scotland. May I follow up on what Mr. Scotland has asked on staffing? And I'm dealing with Mr. Winters here, where you raised the issue of a review or reviewing the organizational chart of self-help, National Commission for Self-Help, and you are looking forward to having a new organizational chart by December of this year. Because I have noted that we have a lot of vacancies at National Self-Help. Based on the information we have before us, you have about 53 workers right now, but you have a complement of a staff complement of 83. So you have a few people, a few posts or offices vacant at this time. So nevertheless, as you rightly said, you want to revisit, given the thrust of self-help, you may need new personnel on board. In this particular regard, I saw on your webpage or website posts being advertised, and maybe you'll want to share with us what is the position of that post and when interviews are going to be conducted for this position. Something called facility support technician, which is advertised on your website or webpage, as you call it. You want to share with this committee the functions of this new office holder and when you intend to bring that person on board?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, can I ask Mr. Green, who is also the HR manager of the entity, to respond to that one?
All right, thank you, Chair. Hi, Chairman. So again, with the realignment of the Commission's operations to strategic intent, it created an emergency need for some short-term temporary solutions that would satisfy these needs while the Commission goes forward for approval for a long-term solution. So this position of the facility support technician is really to address issues at our 3 different locations. We have a head office location, a location in South and one in Tobago. And it is, we still in the recruitment process where the vacancy, the short-term temporary vacancy has not been filled. To reiterate that it is a short-term temporary position being proposed for a 3-month period to address this need. That the board found it necessary that we use this to just facilitate this need while we go through our organization relook process. So that is the status with that position. We have advertised it, solicited applicants and still in the recruitment process for that position.
And how many applicants have applied thus far?
Chair, I could, it's approximately, I want to say about 30. I could furnish you with a confirmed number.
And how many positions you're trying to establish? As you said, a temporary interim for 3 months, as the case may be. How many positions? Is it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
One position, Chair.
Just one position?
Yes, for that facility support technician, one position.
Okay. Now, even though it is temporary and interim, have you sought to get the approval of the ministry, the permanent secretary, to ensure that you are at least addressing whatever needs you have as a commission in the proper way? Can you tell me if this particular position, that interim, temporary, 3 month, one person, have you sought any approval for such an appointment or the establishment of such an office, even though it might be interim?
Chairman, at this point, the temporary nature of this appointment has been approved by the board. The appointment, again, it has not yet been done. And so, again, the arrangement, the temporary arrangement has been approved by the board. However, no appointment has been done to seek the approval yet from line ministry to engage the person.
Mr. Winters, in terms of the approval of the board, have you discussed this matter with the line minister or ministry and corporation sole to ensure that you are on course, proper course, in deciding on this temporary interim engagement?
Yes, Chair, we have discussed it to the extent of not establishing a position in terms of like a 3-year contract, but we have discussed it in terms of an urgent need and that of, really getting, ensuring that our facilities are properly maintained, meaning our North Office or South Office and our Tobago Office. What we are not doing is that we are not creating a position of sorts in the organization. We are just filling a temporary need as it relates to that of facilities, support of facilities management.
And what do you anticipate the cost to be?
So we are looking at it in alignment with that of the CPO guidelines. So there is a recommendation from CPO as it relates to the qualifications for such a, not the qualifications for the designation of such an office. Mr. Green could probably give us the final figure on that, but we are looking at it in alignment with what the CPO has recommended for such a position.
Mm-hmm. Now I'll come back to that because I'm not too clear myself on that matter. So I will have to get some clarification. But whilst I'm clearing my mind on that one, on the issue of, you had some challenges both with securing an internal auditor, which you have now secured, which I'm happy about. And you also had a challenge with your corporate secretary. Now, I know that when you had submitted your, when we got the statement from National Self-Help in the month of April, I believe, 2022, you didn't have an auditor, internal auditor, nor a corporate secretary. You now have both. Can you tell us when the corporate secretary was engaged?
Yes, certainly, Chair. But is it possible that I could just provide you with a bit of a historical perspective on it, or you just want the date?
Well, you can give me a perspective on it, and as well as you did. Yes.
So just based on our organization's records, we had a corporate secretary that was appointed to the position in November 1st of 2016, and however, that individual was terminated in 2019. Subsequent to that, we had a corporate secretary in December 10th of 2019, and who later resigned. Our last corporate secretary, she was recruited on March 3rd, 2020, and her period of employment was sporadically interrupted by unplanned periods of absences, which included periods of quarantine, and extended period of leave. So she would have abruptly left office on the 26th of September, 2022 with no notice to the organization. And the board, realizing this urgent need, we set out to fill the vacancy of corporate secretary, and our corporate secretary assumed duty on October 25th, 2022.
Okay. I noticed, now I know that when we saw the statements submitted by your good self, or maybe not by you at the time, but whoever was in charge of the self-help, who you only came in June. The Office of Corporate Secretary. You have terms and conditions, Mr. Winters, for the Corporate Secretary of National Commission for Self-Help. Is it consistent? Is it consistent?
Certainly, Chair. Yeah, those terms and conditions are in alignment with the CPO guidelines, because if I take you back to the organizational structure of 2014, the cabinet approval of 2014 indicated that, the terms and conditions for the Office of Corporate Secretary, Manager Legal, is in alignment with the guidelines of the CPO. So we have been following those guidelines of the CPO as it relates to the salary of the Corporate Secretary.
All right. I know from what you have, what self-help submitted, the Corporate Secretary at that time, basic, was 12,800, traveling allowance 2,200, and a cellular allowance of 309.38. Can you confirm this is what is currently obtained? Because this is the CPO guideline here. Can you tell me?
Yes, Chair. Now, what I can say for what happened previously is that based on the recommended qualifications and experience for the Office of Corporate Secretary, that would have been somehow downgraded to allow that person to come into the organization back then. So that 12,008 you would have been seeing in terms of the salary for the Corporate Secretary would have been in alignment with what CPO recommended for that of our legal officer one. But our Corporate Secretary, based on the terms and conditions, based on the approval of cabinet, is that of a manager legal, which is in keeping with the CPO guidelines. I can confirm Mr. Green can confirm the salary. If he's unable to confirm now through you, we can submit same in writing.
Right, but are you saying that the current salary was approved by the cabinet? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the current salary for Corporate Secretary is that in alignment with what the CPO recommended for that of a manager legal services. And we have been using, we did use that salary in terms of making the office of the current Corporate Secretary.
You have that those guidelines by the CPO?
I don't have it.
Can you submit that first?
Definitely, definitely. Yes, certainly.
Right, but you are saying in terms of those guidelines, you are saying that those guidelines have been approved by the CPO office as well as the cabinet.
Yes, so the CPO has approved, yes, salaries for the legal framework.
And those salaries are what?
And those salaries will be used to pay our staff.
Okay. And before I ask Mr. Parry to come in, I just wanted to ask you, Tobago, I know that you have South, you have your Port of Spain, and you have your Tobago office. I see you have 3 persons in Tobago, right? What is happening? I want to make a suggestion for your consideration both in terms of South and Tobago. Mr. Parry did in fact raise a number of issues earlier on. And one of the things that we have to probably examine is whether there is some challenges with staffing that may have resulted in the limitations that Mr. Parry is experiencing. So I'm wondering, in terms of your South office, Mr. Winters, do you think there's a need to strengthen the South offices so that, for instance, what we were told earlier on by Mr. Parry in terms of these applications that have been outstanding, maybe that could have been one of the factors, and maybe you want to consider strengthening the South office to that extent. And what is the situation with the Tobago office? Can you bring us up to speed with Tobago?
Certainly, Chair. So I take that recommendation on board strongly, and I take it in the context of North, South, and Tobago, because I mean, when we talk the North office, we're talking everything from Matlock to Chaguaramas. We're talking Blanchisseuse or past Blanchisseuse. We're talking anything in the Caroni area. All those things go to the North office, and anything Shogunas go to in that direction goes to the South office, and of course Tobago office services the entire island of Tobago. So I am in full agreement with you that we do need some review of the staffing in those areas, North, South, and Tobago. As it relates to the Tobago office, we are currently serviced by a project officer and an administrative assistant. We have advertised the positions of senior project officer for Tobago to get that really going in terms of servicing the needs of Tobago. So all those advertisements have gone out, and it's just for us now to conduct those interviews. Those are actually shortlisted then interviews.
So how many persons you have right now on the ground in Tobago servicing the needs of the people of Tobago?
So we have a project officer and an administrative assistant, Chair.
I know that in the past we had, based on information we had before us, one project officer, one administrative assistant, one clerical assistant. Are these people based in Tobago? Are they from Tobago? Are they from Trinidad? How is this office staffed? Because it doesn't matter if they come from Trinidad or if they are from Tobago. But as we speak now, what has been the experience and what is the current reality?
So our recruitment, when we recruit our staff to work with the National Commission for Self-Help, you can work North, South, or Tobago. Currently, the two staff in Tobago, they are from Trinidad. But when we're looking at the recruitment in Tobago, we tend to really look for somebody from the island of Tobago to service the needs of Tobago. So while this is not a fixed criteria in terms of the recruitment and selection for staff for the Tobago office, we tend to look at that a little with a closer view.
Right. Now, I would imagine that because of the inconvenience for the citizens from Trinidad serving in Tobago, you will have to bump up their terms and conditions, or would you have to address certain other stipend to make sure that they are well taken care of? Are they permanently based in Tobago? Is it temporary until you fill those things? And in the interim, can you provide us with their terms and conditions of engagement in writing?
Certainly, Chair. Certainly, I can give you that in writing, yes.
Okay. I think Mr. Parry wanted to raise a few matters. Mr. Parry?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'll be very, very quickly. I know we're running close to the end of the day. I want to anchor the next couple of questions on your strategic plan going forward. And I want to commend Senator Sagram Singh for making a very valid point that as you strengthen your requirement process, that you don't eliminate or alienate the most vulnerable people who are depending on your service. Now, that being said, in my experience from the data coming into our offices, they normally have easy time getting the paperwork from the disaster management unit with a little nudge. You get the applications, you get the estimates and so on. But the issue of title and tenancy is where I think the bulk of the challenges are. And if I were just to revert to Mr. Sinanan, who is your legal person there, my recollection prior to 2015, self-help, as many other agencies, would have accepted an affidavit, a sworn declaration that I have been residing on this premises for 20 years, 25 years, with whatever is the format they've done, someone who would have known them for that period of time would swear to that as well. And obviously that is a legal document. You can be charged for perjury by law and so on if you lie on one of those documents as well. Is this something that you can look at in reverting to going forward in terms of proof of this tenancy and occupation by using the affidavit, the sworn declarations, as was done prior to 2015? And I'm not sure why it was stopped. There may have been issues which I'm not aware of. Perhaps if Mr. Sinanan could just chime in on that for this particular area.
Thank you for that question. That is something I would have to look into because that was previous to my tenure. In addition to that, and going a step beyond the statutory declaration and affidavits, we are even considering in the revision of the policy, liaising or establishing memorandums of understanding with certain entities that could provide documentation to that effect in a very timely manner. So once an application comes before us with regard to a similar issue, we are intending to establish methods to secure that information in a very timely manner.
And thanks for that, because one of the things that you find, and in my experience again, and I mean, forgive me for speaking of Mayara as the MP, because that's where the data comes to me. A lot of properties in Mayaro would have been handed down via generation through deeds of gift rather than from Crown Colony documents. So I may have a deed of gift, but I allow Mr. John to reside on one lot of land from that deed of gift that I've had from my great-grandfather. I don't have any paperwork, but I know it's mine because my great-grandfather passed it down. And these deeds of gift, this is where some of the problems come. So when the little house burns down or there's some structural damage, it is even difficult. Although I'm charging a rent to Mr. John, just $100 a month to stay there, I do not have that paperwork, but I can swear via declaration that I am the legal owner through this deed of gift from my great-grandfather. I've been here 30 years. I've been given Mr. John this. He's been here for 20 years. And then we are all covered under this legal document, which is punishable by jail time if you lie. And really, find a way to move this will be the biggest hurdle, especially for those vulnerable in the community, where those issues of tenancy and occupancy really is the greatest hindrance, taking into account our experience in Mayara with land passing down through deed of gifts rather than through normal title documents. Okay. One more question, Mr. Chair, and then I will wrap up for the day. I just wanted to find out from Mr. Winter if currently your organization has certain service level agreements or key performance indices for your organization that you form this agreement with your customers, the people who are making these applications. Does that sort of environment exist now? And if not, is it something that you can look at? So at least the company can measure itself in terms of its own performance. And it would help committees like ours, when your data is presented in terms of these service level agreements, to help better understand your needs and to better, negotiate with your line minister, line ministry, that look, this is the data presented, this is the format, they are not meeting the service level agreement that they've been mandated to. For instance, I think there's just one man, one of your investigators who service from San Fernando to Guayaguayari. I don't know if there's more than one, but one gentleman that I see all the time, and I suspect that load is too much for him. So he may not even be meeting his service level agreements, his performance, because of the share load. So all I'm saying, if it doesn't exist, Mr. Winter, if it is something that can be looked at in implementing going forward in your strategic plans to better measure your own performance at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was my comment today.
Yes, Mr. Winters.
Thank you very much for that that question and comment, Vice Chair. Definitely, that would form part of our KPIs and going forward. We have been looking at that. I'm sure Director Sinanan, their committee has been looking at those at that same recommendation that you just made there. So thank you very much for it as well.
I just have one or two questions before we tie up our meeting. Mr. Winters or the interim CEO, can you tell this committee whether your fleet of vehicles have increased since we were last advised in April of 2022? I see on page 44, you have a list of vehicles that are owned by the National Commission for Self-Help. I see about 7 of them. I just wanted to ask whether the Self-Help Commission has more than 7 vehicles under its ownership and control, or are there many more that have not been listed that we need to be aware of? Mr. Winters or interim CEO?
Yes, Chair, that we still remain with those 7 vehicles to date.
So you have no additional vehicles, right?
No, Chair.
Tell me something. Are all your vehicles marked as I know that the Prime Minister, no, when I would say the Prime Minister, the government is very strong on this issue of having all state vehicles marked and so on, so that we will ensure that state property is protected. Can you advise this committee whether these 7 vehicles that we have on page 44, are they all owned by the National Commission for Self-Help, and are they all marked? And is there any vehicle being used by Self-Help at this time that is not marked that you're aware of?
Chair, can I ask the interim CEO to respond to this one, please?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Chair, yes, through you. So, to my knowledge, one of the vehicles, one of the more recent, one of the more recent acquisitions are unmarked, but we are going to rectify that very soon.
Yeah. So you have, so it's not, so we have increased the fleet of ownership of vehicles by the Commission from 7 to 8. Am I right?
No, Chairman. That vehicle is included in that listing that we forwarded. So it's just one of those vehicles.
All right. What's the number of that vehicle?
I could confirm that with you, Chair.
When I say confirm, yeah, confirm.
The number.
No. The reason why I'm asking this question is because what I have before me are 7 vehicles. All of their numbers are listed. I would want to bore you. You sent it, so you will know the numbers of your vehicles. The one that is unmarked, is it included in the 7 that have been identified on page 44 of your submission? That is the point I'm asking. If it has been included, can you identify the number of that vehicle that is unmarked? That has to be marked, and I want to get a deadline for stamping that vehicle that is currently unmarked.
Okay, Chairman.
Can I
Chairman,
have
I could comment. Yes, Chairman. In terms of just trying to get the listing of the vehicles.
I didn't hear you. So what you said, Mr. Green?
Yes, Chairman. What I'm saying, I can confirm that we will give you a deadline date on marking that vehicle as soon as.
What is the number of the vehicle, Mr. Green? That is the question I'm asking. And apart from the number, when was it acquired? And what is it being used for?
All right, Chairman. In terms of the acquiry date, that I will have to get back to the committee with.
So you don't know when it was acquired? How long have you been working self-help?
I have been here since March of 2021 as a human resources manager.
And is this vehicle a new vehicle, an old vehicle, a second-hand vehicle?
It was.
Is there anybody, Mr. Chairman, let me ask Mr. Winters. Mr. Winters, as the chairman of this self-help, do you know of this unmarked vehicle? And can you tell this committee the number of this unmarked vehicle? When was it acquired? And what is it being used for?
Chair, I'm not aware of any unmarked vehicles of the National Commission for Self-Help. If there are, as I said, it's not something I'm aware of. I can ask Mr. Romain, who served as the interim CEO up until the 12th of September 2022, to kindly respond if he does have that information, please.
Who you want to Mr. Romain?
Yes, please, Chair.
All right, Mr. Romain, can you help this committee, please?
All right, through you, Chair, so I could safely answer with regards to the number of the vehicle. The acquisition, which is our most recent acquisition, I do not have in front of me when it was acquired, but I know the vehicle is PCL 1738. Toyota Prado.
PCL, right?
Yes, 1738.
But no, but isn't that so? Is that part of the 7 that
yes,
you submitted?
It forms part of the 7 vehicles, yes.
Okay, so
but it is a recent acquisition that we would have gotten from the ministry, our line ministry. It came unmarked.
Oh, it came unmarked.
Yes, it came unmarked. So we are yet to put the stamp on it. That is why it remains.
Can I get from how long has it been unmarked? And how long did you acquire it?
I don't have the timeline in front of me, but I know.
Can you provide the time, Mr. CEO, interim CEO? Can you provide us with the following? Yes. 1, when was this vehicle passed on to National Self-Help by the line ministry? 2, why has it not been stamped as all vehicles owned by self-help have been stamped so far? That seems to be the only vehicle not stamped. What is this vehicle being used for? We'd like to have that clear. And do you, as interim CEO, receive a traveling allowance, may I ask?
Yes, so Chair,
No, I'm asking a question to the interim CEO. Can you tell this committee whether you are in receipt of an allowance, and can you clear the air for us as to whether you have use of this same vehicle that Mr. Romano just outlined to us, PCL 1738. Can you clear the air for this committee so we can be guided accordingly?
Yes, Chairman. Sure. So there is a traveling allowance attached to the compensation package of the Chief Executive Officer. So I confirm that. And yes, the vehicle is accessible to persons in the office of the CEO.
And are there others apart from the CEO?
In terms of access to the vehicle, Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Chairman. So the vehicles are used on site visits in difficult terrain as well. And again, yes, sir.
Do you have any position on your establishment right now that is inconsistent with your current organizational chart? And is there a salary? Do you have, for instance, can you provide us with the salaries of your well, first of all, let me just ask the question. Do you have any position or office currently on your establishment that is not part of the current organizational chart approved by the Cabinet of 2014, interim or temporary, outside of the one that that is being advertised? Can you advise this committee? Interim CEO or chairman or both?
So allow the interim CEO to respond to this one, Chair.
Interim CEO, can you guide this committee?
Yes, yes, Chairman. So the only positions that exist outside the approved structure are again in the temporary short-term nature, which include an administrative support officer assigned to the legal department and a community liaison officer assigned to the Tobago divisional office. Again, both of these were again approved by the board to satisfy our emergency need, and they are both in again a short-term arrangement and similar to the facility support technician for a period of 3 months.
But does the board have that authority to just be employing persons on an interim basis? You talk about a laser officer being temporarily employed and approved by the board. You talked about an administrative position. I don't know what's the full designation of this administrative position. And you know earlier on told us about a facility support technician, all being approved by the board, all being interim, temporary, all are being paid by salaries approved, I would believe, by guidelines set by the CPO. My concern is, does the board have the authority to employ persons, whether they are interim, temporary, as well? And when you talk about interim, temporary, how long is this administrative officer that you mentioned being employed with the National Self-Help Commission? If it's interim, is it for a 3-month period, a 6-month period, a 12-month period? What is the time frame?
A 3-month period, Chairman.
And what is the salaries or salary rather, and terms and conditions of those office holders, both the laser person in Tobago as well as the administrative officer?
So, Chairman, while I can't give you the exact figures now, I can submit that to the committee in writing, if permitted to do so.
And does the board, okay, let me just ask Mr. Winters. Mr. Winters?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Can you tell this committee whether your board has the authority to employ persons on a temporary interim basis as in administrative offices, laser offices, or the one that we mentioned earlier on, without the express approval of the Cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, having had that position submitted by the board through the permanent secretary and ultimately approved by the Cabinet? Can you tell us whether you can do so without Cabinet approval?
So, Chair, the thing is that we have not created any long-term positions. What we have done is that we have identified an urgent need. What we have looked at in terms of identifying the gaps within the organization are some urgent needs that need to be filled, and we sought to fill those by the creation of these just these temporary arrangements. These arrangements are not expected to last in excess of the 3 months. They have all been created within a period of time of filling particular key vacancies.
So in the case of the administrative officer, when was that person engaged?
I don't have the exact date, Chair, but that 3-month engagement comes to an end very, very soon.
Oh, so was that in 2022?
2022, yes, Chair.
You can't say if you cannot, as the chairman, well, may I ask the interim CEO to tell us when the administrative officer was engaged? Was it in the month of April? Well, you came in June. We are now in November. Can the interim CEO advise us when this person was engaged, the administrative officer?
Yes, Chairman, that would have been in August of this year.
And when is that person term supposed to end, the interim term?
This actually
so
this
August, September, October. We are now in November. If it's a 3-month period, it was supposed to end at the end of October. We are now in November. Is the person still employed?
So Chairman, through you,
I'm asking the question. Is the person still employed?
Yes, Chairman.
And how long do you think, Mr. CEO interim, would that person be engaged for? Until the end of December or next year?
So, Chairman, the engagement spans the 8th of August to the 7th of November.
Or 8th of August. And you will provide this committee with the terms and conditions of that person's engagement, as well as the liaison officer. Yeah, I think those are the two, and then you have another one that is coming up. Now, the final point I want to raise, Tobago again. Did the former workers resign? Did they leave? How? Why did we have this crisis emerging in Tobago? Can you provide us with some answers?
Yes, Chair. You know, I would describe it as a crisis, Chair, because what happened in Tobago is that we received a number of complaints, both written and verbal complaints, from our clients in Tobago. What we set out to do in September of this year, effective September 5th of this year, was to really get a training program going for our projects team. So what we sought to do was to bring those 2 persons from Tobago to Trinidad for a 3-month period to understudy and to work along with the projects team in Trinidad, which and most of the persons in Trinidad have been part of the organization for a number of years. So on the day that these persons were supposed to come across to Trinidad, we received resignation letters from them, but it did not place the organization, I would say, within a crisis. Chair, we were able to service the needs of Tobago by the reassignment of those 2 persons to persons in those vacancies in Tobago.
You said that you received what, a series of complaints?
Complaints, Chair, yes.
From who?
From our clients,
Like what? Can you identify what these complaints were all about?
So Chair, I don't want to
Can you put in writing and provide us with copies of those complaints that you mentioned, so that we at our level can understand why you took the position that you took, or why those persons, as you said, were supposed to come to Trinidad for some training program, and on the day they were supposed to come, they all resigned. So, and you were saying that the reason why you wanted them here is to deal with those complaints so that they could provide better service. Put everything in writing, attach all those complaints that you receive from the clients of National Self-Help, so that this committee could be aware of what is taking place in Tobago. Now, I think I'd like to, at this time, pause. If we need to have you back, we will alert you. If we don't, we will write to you. Any further questions we want to get from your good self on this very important matter of national self-help. I would like, on behalf of our committee, the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, to thank everyone for being here with us. We'd like to first of all recognize all the officials from the Ministry of Sport and Community Development for being here with us today, this morning into this afternoon. We'd also like to thank all the members and officials, including directors of the National Commission for Self-Help for being with us today. We would also like to thank all our committee members for being here with us today, as well as the viewing and listening audience, right, for tuning in to this inquiry. I would like to excuse all of the officials at this time. I would like to ask our members to remain for a closing session of our meeting. And with those few words, I would like to thank all of you for being here today. And as I said, if we need to communicate with you further, either to come directly or through responses in writing, we shall do so. This meeting is now suspended.